Hello, fellow YouTubers. This is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music. And in this video, we're going to take a look at major 7th chords, their inversions, and their voicings. Now, the first chord we'll look at is the C major 7th chord. And the principles involved in the major 7th C chord will be the same for all the other chords and all the other scales. So first, you have to define what scale you're talking about. So in this case, the C scale, all the white notes. And then if we choose the first, third, fifth, and 7th note of the scale, we have the C major 7th in root position. So all we're doing is taking a C major and adding the 7th. So the same thing would be true in any other key. For example, in the key of D major, you would take the first, third, fifth, and add the major 7th, which happens to be a major third above the 5th of the scale. And if we were to do E, for example, here's your E major chord. From the B, go up a major third, and there you have it. So a major third is basically 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones. And let's do F. Here's F. Here's the F scale. So if we take the first, third, and fifth, and then the 7th, there's an F major 7th. And then we can continue on G. That's your 7th there. Then A. There's your B. There's your 7th. Then back to C, and then we could do the keys starting on black notes. So that's actually a D major chord with then you go up a major third. And then, so there's your first, third, fifth, and your major 7. And then so there's your F sharp major chord, then go up a major third from the last note, which is C sharp with the triad, and you have your F sharp major. And the same thing for your A flat major 7, and the same for the B flat major 7. So there's your 1, 3, 5, and major 7, which is the 7th note of the B flat major scale. So now the notation for a root is 7-5-3. Now where that comes about, if you take the C major 7, by the way, the C minor 7, you just take the 7th note and diminish it. So there's a C major 7. And if you take the C minor chord and add the flatted 7, you get the C minor 7. But we're just trying to focus on the major 7th chords for now. And the same ideas of these inversions will apply. So here we have the root position. Then we have the first inversion. So we get that by taking the bottom note and moving it up an octave. So there it is. And then we get the second inversion by taking the bottom note, moving it up an octave. And then we take the bottom note again, move it up an octave. And we have the third inversion. So basically, and it's good to practice working with the inversions as well. Just get a certain amount of fluidity in working with your different inversions. Now, why do we call this the root inversion or the root position the 7-5-3? Well, the lowest note in the chord is C, and the second note of the chord is actually a third up from C in the scale. And then the next note in the chord is a fifth away from the root C, and the last note in the chord is a seventh interval away from, or the seventh note of the scale, or a seventh interval away from the root note C. So there's C, there's the third, go up a fifth from C, and go up a seventh from C. So you get the 7-5-3. Now, the next inversion, the first inversion, the bottom note is E, and the next note in the chord is up a third from that. And then the next note in the chord, which is B, is actually a fifth away from the lowest note E. And then the highest note is actually a sixth interval away from the E. So that's why we call it a 6-5-4. Now, this is useful assuming you want to read books that refer to these chords by these names, so you know what it is you're reading. Otherwise, you won't have a clue, okay? The second inversion, the lowest note is G, and then if we go up a third, that's why we have a 3 there. Then you get E, and then you go up a fourth from G, and that's where the C is, and then the sixth interval from G is our E, and that's where the 6 comes from. So basically, it's an interesting way of looking at it. It's all in terms of intervals of the bottom relative to the bottom note. So in our last inversion, the bottom note is E, and if you go up a second, you get the next note in the chord, and if you go up a fourth from the bottom note, then you get the next note in the chord, which is an E, and then if from the bottom note, which is B, if you go up a sixth, you get G. So that's what this notation means. Now, and it's common in all books on theory and so on. Now we shorthand these inversions. So the root we just call a 7, and then the first inversion we just call a 6-5, we shorthand it. And then the second inversion is 4-3, and the third is a 4-2. Okay, so those are the inversions. Now, and this would be true for, suppose we're doing, say, an F major 7, so the F scale. So you have your first, your third, your fifth, and your major 7. The minor 7 would be E flat. So if we're talking about a major F chord, a major F 7th, then the first inversion, you just take the bottom note, move it up. Same way we did with the C. So it's the same principle in all your, not only your major 7ths, but your minor 7ths as well. So major 7ths, and then we have major, we call them dominant 7ths, but we'll get into that in another video. So this is enough to digest for one video, especially all of these inversions and the notation. Okay, now the other thing I want to get into is voicings. So we have these voicings up here, which are root, first inversion, second inversion, and third. We have those voicings, but if we spread them out, these are called closed voicings because the notes are relatively close together. But if we spread them out, like in here, we take the C and the G, and then we put the E and the B on top. So basically you're taking this chord and you're taking these two notes, the E and the B, and you're moving them up an octave. And then if you take the bottom note, which is C, and move it up an octave, you get the second voicing that we have right here, okay, where we have G, C, and then EB. And then you can also take the bottom voicing, move it up an octave. There's your C, G, and then take the top voicing, which is E, B, and move it down an octave. And you get this voicing, which is quite a pleasing voicing. And I'm sure you've heard that in many different film scores and many different piano pieces and so on. So it's quite a pleasing voice, as are these. Now, another thing you can do with these open voicings is you can do planing. And you can do with the closed voicings too. For example, let's start with the closed voicing, the root position. And just move that same finger position up the C scale. So we're planing. We keep the same position of our hand and playing the notes. And then if we go up to the first inversion and go up, keeping that same position, or down. And we can do the same thing with the next inversion. And then the last inversion, the third inversion. So that's called planing. So it's a useful technique. Now let's take a look at the open voice down here. And let's use the planing technique. So just move down one whole step in the C scale, or just follow the notes in the C scale. And I'll switch to the second voicing. Oops. So that's the voicing right here where we're doing the 3 and the 7 and basically the 5 and the 1 in the left hand. And then the other voicing, which is a closer voicing, where we have the... So I'm using this voice right here. And when you plane, of course, you probably want to plane with 2 hands, because planing this chord is rather difficult with one. So that'll wrap it up for the content for the major 7th. We've talked a little bit about or just a glimpse about what happens if you flat the 7. But we'll get more into that in another video. This is major 7th voicings, open and closed, as well as the inversions. So we have the root first, second, and third. And here's your shorthand notation for root position, first, second, and third. I mean, for all practical intents and purposes, you can just, say root first, second, and third. But the reason we got into this is because if you're reading any kind of literature, this will be frequently used, almost exclusively used in any kind of a theory book. And it's good to know what's actually going on, because it's not commonly known unless you're taking a course, a colors level course in harmony. That's where they get into these things. So this is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music. If you like this video, please click like. And if you want to keep this channel going, and if you want to be notified as soon as a new video comes out, then please subscribe. So Bill McFadden signing off from Tone Pure Music.